right, hello everybody. My name is Paul Rogers. I'm the CEO here at Prime Mind Body, and I'm very excited to introduce some incredible people to you today and introduce a study that has been in the making for quite a while now, that really strongly validates the power of our product, focus specifically on what it does, the benefits for the brain. And we were looking, this was a couple of years ago, because there's so many CBD, CBG products out there. You can buy CBD products at gas stations now, but the quality of the product varies wildly. We always focused on either organic products or products grown to organic standard, highest quality of ingredients, and really creating a product that was going to make an impact, change people's lives in a very positive way. But the thing is, everybody says that. And what I just said to you, a bunch of people say that. We wanted to find a way to validate it. So it wasn't just us saying it. We could demonstrate that this product truly does make a huge difference in people's lives. Knew Brian Jones, former NFL player. I've also probably seen him on CBS broadcasting, talking about the SEC. He's one of the main analysts for CBS and the SEC. And his business partner, Kenyon Rashid, they came to me talking about, hey, we could do a study with former NFL players. And immediately, I loved the idea, because what I always talk about with these guys is NFL players, because they all started playing when they were 14, 15 years old in football. So they've had 1,000 car wrecks basically since the age of 14 or 15. And who better to validate, to test, and put it out there to see if this actually makes, if it makes a difference. It was not just a leap of faith, because I felt that it would, but we put a lot of time into it, a lot of thought. Kenyon and Brian did an amazing job of bringing together a large group of former NFL players. And then we'll introduce you to Dr. Ron, who facilitated the study. It's a very high-end neurological study. And we did it over the course of 2 sessions in Dallas and one right before the Super Bowl a few years back. And then Dr. Ron, after that, worked with Dr. Amico, who you'll get to meet here as well, put the study together in such a form that it could then be shared with the world. So I want to introduce you to these incredible people, and I'm going to be quiet and listen on. I'm so excited to get this information out to you. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Brian Jones and Kenyon.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate that, man. And it's been a pleasure to work with you and Dr. Ron. And we're happy to meet Dr. Amico and appreciate all he's helped do to further all the work that we embarked on a couple of years ago, as you mentioned. You also mentioned that there was a saturated market, the CBD industry. And what Kenyon and I noticed, that there were a lot of companies utilizing former athletes to bring credibility to their products, but they also were utilizing legacy models to market those products. It was a top-down approach. And Kenyon and I got to thinking, man, how about we regale numerous former players, not just one superstar, and lean on his spiel about what the product does, but let's bring together a lot of former players and have them utilize the product, and from there we can build more credibility, validate it, and it's not just one of those guys you're utilizing in a super marketing campaign. So that's where we began. And as you mentioned, we started there in Allen, Texas, and also down in South Florida and Miami prior to the Super Bowl. And the response was through the roof. And Kenyon, I'll let you jump in here, and Dr. Ron, but I think we all were surprised. One, Dr. Ron said that what we experienced wasn't dissimilar to what he had experienced when he tested veterans coming from the theater of war. And for Kenyon and I to see these former players, and the ages ranged from late 20s all the way up to 60 and 70-year-olds, seeing these young men, the just feelings and emotions pouring out of them because they all were seeking some type of remedy to help them deal with myriad elements, whether it was memory loss, pain, what have you. And for us to be able to bring something to the table that they could utilize that was healthy, that wasn't a pharmaceutical, that wasn't gonna spend, as the commercials do, 30 seconds telling you what it's gonna cure and another minute and a half tell you what it's gonna screw up. We brought something that was valuable and that would definitely be beneficial. And so we had a blast interacting with those men, and it was therapeutic for us as well.
Yeah, I think again, BJ, I think it was an alignment, right? When we heard the benefits of what Focus could do, and then we looked at the challenges from a health perspective that our retired players were experiencing, we were like, well, if it actually does what we say it'll do, then let's test it out and let's get their honest, unfiltered opinion on how the product works, which I think is how we started it. Right. And then I think as the project kind of continued on, and it wasn't just the test, it was also the testimonials around the test, the entry interviews where they're talking about their challenges and they're really opening up and really asking for help. And hey, no one really identifies with what we're going through. And I think just from that development of that community, and then having Dr. Ron explain to them what was actually happening, right? I think we as athletes, we keep saying we want answers. We want to know, how do we fix problems that are going on with our bodies? And we're hypersensitive to our bodies, probably to a fault in some cases. But I think what we found is, hey, if we find a solution that works, and again, I think after listening to our players talk about the product without us prompting them, just based on the test, I think it's testimony of what the product does. And obviously it was great just to see their faces and be able to help them out at the same time.
What do you touch on just a couple of things that professional athletes deal with? When you're saying well, yeah, okay.
Well, you want to get involved with me and BJ's daily conversation?
What's hurting today, Kenyon?
What the problem is, well, today is the back. Today we can't focus, can't sleep, get up. This was the biggest eye-opening to me, was the sleeping problem, the inability to stay asleep or shut your brain down or just be able to focus where I can get all of these thoughts out of my head. What we found is a lot of players, as they start to age, are all of a sudden getting up earlier, and I'm one of them, and couldn't really figure out why. So to listen to other former players, understand that they had the same ailment and kind of going through the same thing, and we're all seeking answers to that same question. So I think getting it together and then being able to understand that there's a help out there for you, that we all can say works on us. And I think that's the biggest thing of kind of how we looked at it, is we see ourselves as a little different. So we played a hell of a game. Our bodies are beat up. Some of us probably have mental problems, which happens when you get your head banged in as many times as we do. So how do we deal with that, right? And I think just from a lifestyle perspective of what they're looking for and what we were looking for, I think this test and this study really kind of helped us get to that place.
Well, Prime My Body, Dr. Ron and you guys, y'all injected Focus into the marketplace at the right time,
Yeah.
because it was at the height of all the concussion discussion. And me personally, I was dealing with some issues, and I would read something and I'd look at the camera and I'd forget what I was supposed to say. And it scared me, you know what? And you shared the focus with me, and I had my own little personal individual study going on right here at the house. And I realized after a few weeks that I didn't strain to recall information. I realized that I was more lucid. I had more mental acuity. And it just dawned on me one day when I was sitting there, I was like, wow, that focus works. So from a mental standpoint, memory standpoint, memory recall, it was outstanding. Kenyon touched on some of the other elements we're dealing with. Primarily, it's pain, it's inflammation, man. That's the big driver of a lot of the things that we former athletes, especially football players, have to deal with on a daily basis. And focus has assisted, not only with my mind, but my body, just realigning it and getting everything back in focus.
Well, and having you guys bring the people together that Dr. Ron's going to talk about and the testing that was done, you guys were invaluable. I couldn't have done it. Dr. Ron couldn't have done it. We didn't know the passcode to get into that door to talk to former NFL players.
Yeah.
Y'all are part of that fraternity, and they trust you. You know, they know that you've been in the trenches, you've been through what they've been through, and they're naturally skeptical because they've had a lot of promises of testing, which you guys talked about.
Oh.
And you guys bringing these folks together, and the product, yes, had an impact, but you guys had a tremendous impact on their lives. And now with this study, we're going to be able to validate and touch tens of thousands more lives. So truly, I thank you for the hard work that you guys did in bringing these folks together and making this a reality. So thank you for that very much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to work with you.
And we were ahead of the curve. So if
Yes.
you're catching this now, I want you to start thinking about how the cannabis plant and hemp is being tested with the NFL and with the grants that are going toward it, because we're all looking for solutions to pain management. We're looking for solutions to post-concussion syndrome. And now the professional leagues are adopting the study that we did 2 years ago.
Mm.
We have more data today than they have today by the group that we tested them on. So I want everyone to understand the groundbreaking project that this was even 2 years ago, and start to look for clues of how far we were ahead of the curve.
That's powerful. Yeah, that's a great point. So Dr. Ron, it's a great introduction now to you. This obviously wouldn't have happened also without your expertise and you doing the testing. And so thankful for what you did. Walk everybody through what the testing process was, and then we can look at what you discovered and what you saw from the results.
Right. So there were a lot of surprises, and I don't think I expected to get sort of as emotional as I did when speaking to a lot of these players, sort of before and after a scan, because before they come in and they're just super skeptical, right? They're like, what it is, I'm just gonna, trust that you're doing the right thing. And then afterwards, it's like sort of this cathartic thing that just has a free flowing of conversation of things they've never really talked to anybody about. And I mean, I only talked to them for like, 5-10 minutes tops, but in that 5-10 minutes has really made an impact on me and on them as well. And so, and I think there's several reasons for that, right? So I think the first reason is that when they come in as skeptic, they should be skeptical because they've had trauma. And I'm not talking about concussive trauma. A lot of their symptoms weren't validated either by their peers, their family, by doctors, lawyers even, right? And you only can speak so much truth until the validation goes away, and you just have to hide it, and you just kind of stuff it down on the inside, right? And so, and this is so reminiscent, because I brought Caesar with me, and Caesar is the person who did the brain maps, and he is a combat veteran to the highest degree of a combat veteran, and talking about PTSD groups and stuff like that. He's seen it all. And he was showing me he's getting goosebumps because like the level of conversations he's hearing from the players are like on an identical feeling, right? Frequency as what he's talking about in his PTSD groups and stuff like that from people who are in active military. And so really to this day, we still talk about that feeling and how special it was for us to really be, not just be involved in something like that, but to actually go in and talk to these players and say, hey, not only can we validate like what you feel, like I have a number to show you. Instead of you saying fatigue, I have a number. Instead of you saying brain fog, I have a number here, right? And there's nothing more validating than turning words into numbers. And here's the really cool part. The numbers aren't just numbers. The numbers are telling you how far away from the normal you are compared to the normal population, right? And that's what the brain mapping is. This device called BrainView, it's a quantitative EEG analysis, shows you what you are compared to the average population. When people saw that they went like the bottom 5th percentile or bottom 0.5 percentile of the average population, they're like, whoa. And then the truth comes out, because they actually see their symptoms like on the data sheet, on the second page. It says verbal memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, right? Circadian disorders and stuff like that. They're like, oh yeah, that's me. And then that started this conversation. Now, what's remarkable is I really didn't know how this is going to go. From anecdotal evidence and from looking at other data, we know from like symptoms wise, like that focus works. We know, right? But what would it do under the EEG? And I was honestly really nervous going into this because I don't, even if we see stuff, I don't know it's going to be statistically significant, right?
Yeah.
And so when we did the before and afters on the brain mapping, it's very obvious that the players themselves actually felt a difference, right? And all of a sudden they're like a little chippier and happier. And Kenyon and Brian, you guys were witness to this, like literally like by the minute. they were really engaging, right? So it's like everything is just kind of chilled, which is really nice. But what's interesting is I went over their after scans with them, and there were markers that were improving there. And I'm like, what I didn't know if this is going to improve or not, but it actually did. And here's what we can see behind it. And whenever you're doing an investigative study and something like that, it's really easy for me to get my emotion into it and say, hey, yeah, this looks good. But there was no mathematician there, right? And so I really wanted to bring in people that I knew who were way smarter than me on what this data looks like from the mathematical side, from a scientific side, and the clinical relevancy side. And then so I reached out to Dr. Amico, who's actually on the Zoom right now. And we're like, okay, you're halfway around the world, Dr. Amico. So thank you very much for taking on this project.
No, absolutely. My pleasure.
Yeah, and he's in Ireland, by the way. And so when I sent this to him, I'm gonna kind of get him to explain his reactions and sort of the process. But there was a lot of work from the scientific side to really validate this, because one, we have to make sure that the device that we're using is validated. Number two, we have to make sure that statistically speaking, mathematically speaking, it's something that is usable and that has in science we call it external validity, meaning that it's valid outside of this sort of the study. And then number three, we want to make sure that not only are we getting good quality data, that we can potentially reproduce the data later on. So Dr. Amico, I'm going to kind of hand this off to you on the scientific side.
Sure. So again, it was a great pleasure. Before I go any forward, I have to give credits to my colleague in Italy who actually specializes in data analysis and EEG, MEG data analysis. And so she did lots of, she played a very, very important role in this paper. So, but my role was to basically put together everything. So the pharmacology side and also and the EEG side. So technically speaking, it was a pharmaco EEG study that for me it was actually very exciting to put together and to think about. So so the main problem with American football, like, is the same problem that high impact sports have: boxing, martial arts. Basically, you get hit, and over time, the mechanical impact generates can trigger neurodegeneration. And so altogether, what's been seen in traumatic brain injury, basically TBI, is that people start having problems, cognitive problems, attention, focus, of course, and short-term memory, long-term memory, but also what many people might not know is that there's in the emotion regulation domain, in the affective domain, there are also big problems. And not necessarily because people start to understand that, like pretty much what happens in Alzheimer's, that, people start to get depressed about their cognitive situation, but simply because it's just something that happens biologically, it's triggered biologically. So what we found in this study was not just the improvement in some measures, as Dr. Ron was saying, in measure of cognition, but also some measures of what I prefer to call on the paper resilience under stress, which is huge if you think about that. If an athlete who's constantly under stress for multiple reasons, and so being able to focus on the stress and having that emotional resilience to control your thoughts, and that from many points of view, it can be measured by by the systems that we use to on a daily basis is key. So having found that there was an improvement in a measure that has been shown in the literature is to be associated with resilience and also cognition and also psychomotor improvement. It was absolutely key to. I think it's very, 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 very promising for such a drug to. Well, it's not a drug, such a preparation. And I'm very actually thrilled to see follow-up studies. And also, in a much larger population, and I'm sure that we'll be able to demonstrate to see other effects on other biomarkers.
One thing I want to capitalize on is there's a lot of firsts in this study. Okay, and I read, looking at what the NFL is actually funding for some of these research. I mean, we already did it. So
Yeah,
there was
that's
grants
right.
given in 2022. I'm like, I mean, we kind of did that and more, right? We're able to show empirical evidence, and not just that, some statistically significant evidence of what the brain is actually doing. And these are all in numbers of improvement. We're not talking about something that's cursory. We're not talking about like symptom scores, right? Subjective scores. We're talking about actual numbers that correlate with things that we can physically see on the electroencephalogram on the BrainView device. And that's significant. Now, are we the first one to do CBD and QEEGs? No, we're not. But we're the first ones to show the markers in the way that we that it is right now, which is that brain resilience, right? So like if I was playing a video game and Brian's my character, I wanna upgrade his armor and stuff like that. I would say, hey, I want you to go from level 1 to level 2 on your brain. So that's improving that resilience, right? It's almost like a software / hardware upgrade, right? And that's the best way to kind of think about it is resilience is such a key factor because it's not a one specific biochemical pathway. It's just the overall resilience of the brain that we can actually see. And that hasn't been demonstrated before ever, right? And so this is quite a huge feat that was done. And another thing, as Dr. Amico was saying, that of course it's not just, you know, football, right? American football. It's contact sports in general, but more importantly, it's not specifically the sport, it's the human. So we didn't take people with concussions and did this study. We took people that were in a situation where they were having many exposures to concussions, but also exposures to trauma, exposures to life. These are humans that were actually tested. And so it's not like, oh, you know, we're not going to say that focus is the cure-all for concussive injury. It's not. We're not going to say that focus is going to be like upgrading anybody's brain to withstand more hits. It's not. That's not what it does. What focus did, we took this group of wonderful humans who all suffered through very similar things, and we were able to see some dramatic improvements on the brain. And that's what I want to talk about in terms of like external validity, right? So we want to make sure that this is valid. So anything moving forward, we want to take other groups of humans and make sure that we honor the things that they go through and see the same things on the changes that they go through as well. And so there's a lot of firsts here. I just really want to highlight that.
And and people might be thinking, okay, you did a test and then they got on focus for, you know, a week, 2 weeks, 30 days. You came back and did it again. One of the things that blew me away is the speed of it. Just touch on that just briefly, if you would.
Oh, right. So let's talk about the design. So we were able to do before and after scans on them with no delay. So it's like they did the baseline, did the focus, and we did it again right afterwards. So you know, in retrospect, that was kind of a gutsy move because I didn't know it was going to work. but
That's what I was
yeah,
thinking, should we give it a little bit more time? You know.
But the reason we did it is because in other populations, and you know, I have people on the actual EEG device as we're given it, and we're seeing immediate changes. That's actually the reason why. So I had some higher level of confidence that it was going to do well. So yeah, the before and after scans are actually right afterwards, so we can say that, you know, this is something that's an effect that we don't have to wait like days for, hours for, and stuff like that. That's one portion of it. And the other portion of it, and speaking of firsts, is that if you actually look at like the CBD studies that are done right now, they don't put out the certificate of authenticity as well as the ingredients on the CBD. All they do is that this is hemp oil, right? This is CBD oil. And so another study could be using a different thing. There's no control there. But if you actually look at the study that we put in there, you have the exact thing, exact ratios and amounts of each of the cannabinoids that's in there. And by the way, there's no THC, right? Because most of these studies actually have some THC that's within the cannabinoids. So this is a non-THC formulation with a standardized amount of goods that are in there, let's call it, right? And so that's something that you don't really see in cannabinoid studies either. And you know, for those of you who don't know, the cannabinoid content differs from batch to batch. There's no regulation on that, right? And so this is what I was talking about, external validity. We want to be able to prove that, hey, we could potentially do this again with the same or similar ratios. So that's another huge point here.
And even though we're talking about the group of former players, what we need to understand is there's a cross population across our retired player group. That means from age to fitness level to weight to cognitive, status. We kind of had the gauntlet go across, even though we come from the same fraternity and kind of did the same thing. We also have, in some cases, have been out of the league 20, 25 years, and all of us have gone into different paths. And so I think to get a level of cross population that we got within that unique group, because people think retired players, well, I'm not a retired player. I'm not this athlete or this and that. But what we wanted to show is that as we move into the population, we become like the population. We just happen to have train wrecks and have all of this in our 20s and 30s, and it's affecting us now. But we have that cross population, so it's not something that's just for athletes.
That's an excellent point, guys. I appreciate y'all's time so much. I appreciate the work that you've done to make this a reality, to validate as we are able to share this with more and more people around the world. Any last thoughts that you'd want to share about this process, as we're going to be sharing this video with the world this next week, as we start talking about the study and the numbers behind it. So any last thoughts you might have?
Kenyon and Dr. Ron both hit on the main point, is that we were ahead of the curve. We were way ahead of all that's being done now. And we were trying to tell the world at that point, whether it was through the Forbes magazine and newspaper, the interviews we did there, whether it was through PBS and one of their health episodes. We've been shouting to the heavens about all the great work that this product and Prime My Body has made available. So they're just now taking notice, but it's a wonderful product. It works, and we've proven it again and again, and we'll continue to do that.
And I would just say simplicity. Does it make you feel better? And I think that's what the players wanted to know. At the end of the day, did this make me feel better? Did it help me? We can put all the scientific terms to it, but at the end of the day, the consumer or the athlete needs to understand, does it make me feel better? And I think what we found out is they felt better. They walked out of there feeling better than they did when they walked in, when they took the test, they took the focus, they walked out feeling better. And some of them made sure to follow up before they even got home of how to get more focus, which to me proves that it actually works.
That's so strong. Dr. Ron, Dr. Amico, any last thoughts as we wrap up?
Well, as Dr. Ron was pointing out, the composition of this preparation is unique, in my opinion, and there are a lot of preparations that have come out with the name of CBD, and this is not just CBD, but it's also CBG, and there's also an interesting presence of compounds called terpenoids, which have been shown before that have on their own effects on cognition, resilience, and emotion regulation altogether. So it's a very interesting mix, if you will, of three compounds that on their own have been shown to have beneficial effects on the brain and behavior, on different domains, cognitive, emotional, or affective domain. Yeah, that's just wanted to say this, and I think that underscores the uniqueness of the compound, the preparation.
And my last sort of takeaway is we just have to be careful in the understanding of what this does, right? This is not a medication. This doesn't replace any medications, right? This is something that helps your brain develop that resilience. It's something that helps you, speak to your doctors about if you want to either reduce or come off medication or change medication if you know that's not making you feel well. But the way that I want you to see it is that this is like a food. It's like me talking about blueberries and health benefits. Well, so are cannabinoids are something that you eat as well, right? It's in that category, right? And we know there's health benefits of, blueberries and acai and all this wonderful stuff. But well, this is in that category. So I don't want you guys to think that this is a drug. It is not a cure all because it's not designed for specific disease states. But as Kenyon said, did it make the players feel better? Yeah, it really did. It really touched my heart when I heard about it from an anecdotal standpoint. We're able to show it. We're able to show it on actual brain data from the quantitative EEG, from this BrainView data. And that's should hit in a much higher level, far more powerful than any pharmaceutical drug can possibly do.
I love that. Guys, thank you so much for putting together this study and all the hard work that's been done and sharing your thoughts. We will be talking again. So go have a blessed evening. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.